Nasus is a great low elo champion. The lower the rank, the higher his win rate. He is the ultimate AFK farming champion that you must not leave alone. So in higher ranks, he gets ganked over and over again and dies every time. But I have found a master player who instead plays Nasus Jungle. This gives him a much safer early game and lets him build up a ton of stacks really quick from the camps. He also has a crazy strategy that lets him one-shot towers even with 5 plates. He can win teamfights with a super fast build, and still has his classic OP late game, but now with a special Season 11 twist that makes it even better. You're in a ranked game, your Yasuo mid is 0-10. Oh wow, what a surprise, you lost. But you don't feel bad after the game because you were using our sponsor, and so you get a reward even if you lose. This video is sponsored by Buff, an Overwolf approved app trusted by over 1 million players that runs in the background on your PC and tracks your in-game stats and achievements to give you points. These points can be used to redeem rewards like RP credit, game keys, hardware, and more. It works with League, but maybe one day you want to break from all the toxicity and can take Buff with you to lots of other popular games. Buff also gives you new challenges, so you can have a new goal outside of climbing ranked. This app isn't instant money, but it takes 0 effort to use, it's free, and it takes up a very small amount of your PC's resources, so there's no drawback to leaving it running in the background. Lots of people in our Discord community have been using it for months now. They haven't even touched the app, and now they have enough points to claim some free RP. So if you want some of that free RP, make sure you join Buff using the link in the description below. Our player today is named Dangbakjong, a Korean master player that has played Nasus Jungle since all the way back in Season 2. Back then the strategy was pretty terrible because all jungle minions only gave 3 stacks. In Season 3 this was doubled to 6 stacks per jungle minion, doubling the effectiveness of the strategy. But in Season 4 Nasus actually became a real jungler thanks to Feral Flare. It was a perfect item for all the farming junglers like Master Yi, Udyr, or Nasus. This item meant that he didn't have to gank. He didn't have to have a good early game. He could just farm up and 1v9 the game with this item. But the good times came to an end in Season 5 when the item was removed, leaving Nasus with literally no good jungle item to build. Deng's strategy at the time was just to buy Hunter's Machete for the bonus XP it gave while jungling, and then go straight into a normal Nasus build. The only time Deng stopped playing Nasus Jungle was in Season 5, where he wanted to try some new off-meta junglers, and chose Ryze, actually hitting Diamond with it. Really excited to climb further. Then of course Ryze got his 4th rework, completely ruining his strategy. So back to Nasus. In Season 7, Nasus got a huge buff. When his ult is active, his Q cooldown is reduced by 50%. And this change 4 seasons ago is now the main part of his Season 11 strategy. All of these little changes kept building up. Deng was slowly having his strategy become legitimate, and that was topped off in Season 9, where Nasus again had his stacks from jungle camps doubled, now at 12 stacks per large camp. The final thing Deng needed was a jungle item he could buy instead of Machete. In Season 11, with the addition of the new cheap 1-part jungle items, his Nasus Jungle was finally ready. With a new build and a few new strategies, he hit Master for the first time. The best part of Jungle Nasus is that you can get to the super strong 1v9 version of Nasus with a ton of stacks, much earlier in the game than usual. And unlike top lane, you can do it with almost no danger, thanks to his special jungle path. At level 1, Nasus does not buy refillable potion like other junglers, already starting with a weird strategy. Instead, he buys a control ward and places it defensively in this bush. His only goal early game is to kill camps and stay alive. To pick the side he starts on, he guesses which buff the enemy jungler will start on. The best way to do this is to look at their champion and at your laners. Does the enemy jungler want to gank early on? Do you have a vulnerable immobile laner that they'll want to kill at level 3? Or are they a full clearing jungler that you can just ignore? If the enemy starts on blue buff, Nasus goes red to blue to Gromp, then wolves, raptors, doing crab, and then golems. If the enemy starts on red buff, Nasus goes red, raptors, wolves, then blue, crab, and then Gromp to get some health back. When doing raptors, he focuses the small ones using his E, auto-attacking them, using Q once, and then his second E is enough to finish them off, so he goes back to the main one. You want to kite the camps and stack the big one. If he gets invaded, then he just does the same path but uses the enemy jungle, going to the other side and doing the same 3 camps. Unlike other junglers, his goal now is not to gank. He focuses only on farming as as fast as possible. He will never skip a camp to get a gank off. He only maximizes gold, XP and stacks from the jungle. Get as many stacks as you can while doing this, but his advice is to kill the small monsters as fast as possible, because the faster you kill the camp, the faster it respawns, so then the faster you'll get the 12 stacks from the large monster. After doing this full clear, he will have roughly enough gold to buy Sheen or Lucidity boots if possible. If you started on blue buff, your Grump will be respawning. If you started on red, then your golems will be ready to kill, so you can just go right back into your same path. Your goal is to try and get level 6 as fast as possible. If you finish this and have no camps up, you can now gank, and you do have a very good gank tool, your W slow that lasts for 5 seconds. Especially top lane, it's very hard for someone to escape a gank like this. He then bases again to get Ionian boots or Sheen, and goes back to his route once again to get level 6. At level 6, Nasus is surprisingly strong and can actually now 1v1 any jungler thanks to his ultimate. If you are invaded, you can turn it around. This is a huge power spike thanks to the extra health and the 50% cooldown reduction it gives you on your Q. Nasus can now also go for a very easy gank. Using Ghost and sprinting into lane, he slows the enemy, ulting and chasing them down, running straight into their tower. He is much too tanky to kill and too fast to run away from. Even tower is not enough to defend them. Nimbus Cloak works great with his red smite. Any 1v1 he takes, he red smites them immediately, giving him extra movement speed to dodge skills and reducing the enemy's damage. But it is now time for the main reason you pick Nasus Jungle, the early tower taking. Instead of joining early fights, Nasus aims to make a play on the other side of the map, and has an incredible one prepared. Walking into any empty lane, Nasus clears wave with E and starts to hit tower. He ults, giving him the cooldown reduction that lets him shred through towers for 15 seconds. In the duration of this ultimate and a couple of extra Qs, Nasus can get through all 5 tower plates from full health, giving him 1600 gold as well as minions within 25 seconds of entering the lane. All he needs is a Sheen and boots. Also, if he wins a fight, he goes straight into a lane to take the tower. If he gets a good gank off, then once again he can just take a free tower. It's like you have a Rift Herald on your team, but you don't even have to kill it. Once Nasus is level 6, he is the Rift Herald. This completely destroys the tempo of the game, taking a tower way earlier than it usually is. For Nasus, this gives him safety in his jungle, because his team gets map control. He also gets a huge early lead that pushes him quickly to his first item. With about 300 stacks and 5 points in his Q, he now purchases Divine Sunderer, going for a bruiser Q spam build. He's now ready to fight. In teamfights, he uses his secret weapon, Phase Rush. He hits the enemy front line to activate it, so that he can then sprint into the enemy backline and reach them. The enemy backline's going to be terrified of you, they'll stay really far away, but the enemy front line kinda has to tank you, so they will have to walk up to you, letting you proc it. This gives you access to their ranged backline for free. This rune makes Nasus so weird to play against. He can suddenly gap close onto you without any warning. He can also suddenly get out of danger with a quick reposition, so his immobility is no longer a big issue. His recommendation for teamfighting on Nasus is to try and split enemies up into small battles in the big fight. So if you can isolate a single player, they will stand no chance against a Nasus who has his ult on, giving you an advantage in the fight. If instead the enemies stay grouped up, and he can't do this, his goal changes to make sure the enemy AD carry cannot win the fight for their team. When you're watching him play, it feels like he's just staring menacingly at the enemy AD carry, and then they somehow into the fight. But really, he is keeping his eyes directly on them, pressing W to slow them and their attack speed whenever he gets in range, and he's using Phase Rush to constantly move in and out to keep the pressure on. If they walk forwards to DPS, then he instantly ghosts and smites to get Nimbus Cloak, rushing forwards to one-shot them. This patient teamfighting is why he's able to stay in high elo. He is not sprinting into a group of enemies and getting one-shot. He knows his champion was released 10 years ago, so he doesn't have an overloaded kit that he can just spam buttons and win a fight. Instead, he stalls and picks his moment to unleash his crazy power. But what if enemies are good at kiting? He can instead choose to avoid fights and do a classic backdoor strategy. This is another good way to avoid your weaknesses. He makes sure his wave is ready for a push before an objective comes up, then decides if he wants to contest the objective or trade it for towers. The reason he is in Master Tier is because he picks these opportunities really well, knowing that against a team with lots of CC and high damage, teamfights just won't work. But a 1v1 against a top laner always will. If Nasus tries to chase enemies, it's the hardest way to fight, but now that he's in a side lane, enemies will now be chasing him, so it's much easier easier to turn a fight than it is to chase someone down. He has 3 important tips to win against even the worst jungle matchups. Number 1, focus on not dying. Counter jungling in Season 11 is no longer as good as it used to be. Even if you get a full rotation of 6 camps stolen from you, you can trade it for a gank, and then just go farm up again to get even. We've already seen this happen at Worlds, where someone loses all of their jungle at level 2, and then a couple minutes later they're back in the game even. Fight only on favourable terrain. Nasus is powerless against champions that can jump over walls, so fighting inside the jungle is not great for him, because he can't follow them, especially since he doesn't have flash. His third rule is that no matter what happens, at some point in the game you will have the opportunity to carry. For example, if you're against an Italy, she's going to be really strong early game, your life might feel like hell, but then at one point you'll have held out, and she won't be able to do anything against you anymore. You'll be too tanky, you'll have CC, and you'll do way more damage than her, so he plays slow and scales up, playing side lane so that even if this jungler comes, they can't do anything, he'll be too strong. If he has a really bad early game, then he even stays in the jungle until the 4th dragon. He knows that if early game goes really bad, then his way to win the game is to farm up, get some items, and then take this single fight to try and turn the game. As long as you're not dying, you're not falling behind. If you do find your games are too short for this strategy to work, there's also another player who plays Nasus Jungle on EU West, who instead takes Predator on Nasus. This is a much better early ganking strategy, where you can combo Predator with your W slow for stupidly good ganks that enemies cannot flash away from. For his build, he has an early focus on Ionian Boots and Sheen, first item Divine Sunderer, second item you can choose between Frozen Heart, Spirit Visage or Gargoyle Stone Plates depending on the enemy team, second item Sterax or Anathema's Chains is good for team fighting, or Hullbreaker if you only want to split push. For his runes he just has a ton of movement speed, Phase Rush, Nimbus Cloak, and Water Walking. I'm going to be streaming Nasus Jungle and some new off-meta styles that we're going to invent at twitch.tv/HappyChimeNoises. Thanks again to Buff for sponsoring this video, links to both are in the description.